Are you ready? Hey, everybody.
Hey, Pop.
Hello, everybody.
People in the back.
Welcome, everybody.
Welcome to the Inner Loop.
Welcome, everybody.
Welcome to the Inner Loop.
Without further ado.
Okay, so without further ado, we're going to get started.
We should get started. We're
Yeah.
rambling. I'm rambling.
We're going to get started. Welcome to the Inner Loop Radio. I'm Rachel Kuntz.
And I'm Courtney Sexton.
Thank you for joining us.
If you haven't already, remember to subscribe to our podcast, leave us a review, and check out our website at theinnerlooplit.org.
For any new listeners out there, here on the Inner Loop Radio, we delve into all things creative writing, whether that be inspiration or craft, publishing or editing, how to make a living, or just how we all sit down each day in front of an empty page.
We invite friends and local writers onto the show to talk about their writing journey, what inspires them, or to delve deeper into craft.
On today's show, we want to talk about writing in a second language and what makes English unique. Courtney, did you know there are more people in the world who have learned English as a second language than there are native English speakers?
I did not know.
This is going to be a very did you know kind of episode. Because Courtney and I don't know a damn thing about writing in a second language.
Listen, I took a literary course on Pablo Neruda in Spanish in college.
Okay. All right. I was going to say I did study comparative literature and translated a little Baudelaire in my day.
Yeah, but it's definitely been a minute. And no, you're right. I am certainly not. Although I guess maybe in some of my comms work, there were some like basic translation stuff of like wildlife things. But yeah, it's been a minute.
Well, I was thinking about this in preparation for the episode, and at first I was thinking, well, poetry is all about using language in like new and inventive ways. So on the one hand, it seems like writing in a second language would be an advantage because you automatically see that language in like a new and fresh light. But then I was thinking, actually, it must be really, really hard because you have to really know the nuances of that language in order to like break the rules, you know? So I don't know. I stand on both sides.
No, for sure, because like the fun thing about poetry, right, is playing with turns and line breaks and rhythms, and yeah, you really do have to have a good sense of, you know, not just pronunciation, but the way that words interact with each other. So what are those double entendres? What are other meanings and things? And if it's not your native language, even just colloquialisms, you know, like those kinds of things that get thrown into a poem to make it more to make it come alive in different ways, I think it is a challenge, and yet you can use the form and structure to give yourself some scaffolding if you are working in a different language, which is kind of also the flip side, right?
Yeah. And speaking of translation, I feel like translating poetry is such a cool and interesting art and medium because you kind of have to have a poet to translate a poem because you have to somehow figure out how to make, you know, all of those deep layers of meaning and wordplay and sounds come together in a whole other language. And you end up with two pieces of art that are really more speaking to each other than like a direct
Totally.
transliteration.
Yeah, it makes it, to me, I always think of especially poetic translation as this collaborative art piece. It makes me think a little bit of the ekphrastic event that we just did a couple of weeks ago, with the visual artwork and kind of responding to that. So there is this element of call and response, right? And kind of giving yourself to the piece, but also honoring the originator, and it's a delicate balance.
Yeah, and when I was researching this episode, I was also thinking about what makes English unique. And, every speaker thinks that their language is special.
Sure.
So I don't want to go too far down that avenue of saying English is so special, because it's our language. So we think it's special, but it is interesting in a lot of ways. And, one of my favorite things, one of my, geek moments is etymology. I love
Mhm.
etymology. I've studied ancient Greek, Latin, French, German. So my favorite thing is hearing like all these different languages within our language,
Yeah.
and looking up, like tracing the meaning of words, which actually, I was reading is not as interesting in other languages. There are plenty of languages that are hybrids, but there are a lot of languages that aren't, that have just come from one thing. And it's like, it's not very interesting to look at the etymology of those words. Um, but another fun thing about English, and I wanted to do a little warm up for what's coming later in
Uh-huh.
trivia with you, Court. But there's been all these like funny memes going around on like the English language and funny things about it. So
Yeah.
I wanted to quickly quiz you on different ways to change the meaning of the word shit by adding an animal to it.
Okay.
So, for example, bullshit means that's not
Right.
true,
Right.
right?
Okay. Uh-huh.
So what would another one be?
Horse shit, which
Horse
is,
shit, which
similar,
is
like,
such a good one
so good. Like,
because
that is just, like, blatantly wrong. That's a
just
horse
blatantly
shit.
wrong. That's nonsense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's
What else?
another one?
Dog shit. It's like
Yeah,
it's very poor quality. This
sure.
product is dog shit.
Yeah. Yep.
Bat shit.
Batshit crazy, right?
That shit
Which
crazy.
I don't really know where that comes from. I guess maybe because the toxicity of
I
guano.
was gonna say, I
Yeah.
think that bat shit actually, like, if you get exposed to the
Taxo, yeah.
symptoms, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Could be.
You're a scientist. You're an animal scientist.
Those things.
Um,
Entomology rather than etymology.
there you go. Hey,
Right.
the last one was ape shit,
Oh, yeah.
where you like are
We're like,
very
"Blah."
rambunctious. Yeah,
Yeah, which is
going ape shit.
also not, I mean, anyway. Um, yeah, no, another thing, can I, like, squeeze in there with one more cool thing
Yeah,
about English?
please. Yeah.
I read, this was, I think I was like a teenager still, this book called The Forked Tongue, and it was about origins of English language and words, and this idea that we have both the Germanic and Latin root for almost every word. So like
Mhm.
liberty and freedom,
Mhm.
or like all of
That's
those things
coming up
where it's
later in
like,
our game.
okay, okay, all right, I'll stop there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is interesting. I mean, I prefer the French, but
As Courtney motions to her
yes,
tattoo for
I'm
our
sorry,
listeners
that's
out
why
there.
for the, yeah. Anyway,
The other thing I wanted to say, the last thing before we move on, is that English, like most languages, is also constantly changing. And the
yes.
last did you know for this block is in 2020, 535 words were added to Merriam-Webster that year, just in that year.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
wild, and they all grew out of the pandemic, didn't they?
They grew out of the
Yes.
pandemic, but a lot of them grew out of like we always
Internet
argue about
culture.
how to call the next generation,
Yeah.
the Zennials or the Zoomers,
Right.
like on brand, which I did already use in a
Yeah,
sentence right before the episode.
definitely.
Swole was
So
another
wait,
good one.
on brand, like,
On
hyphen
brand,
is now a word in,
yeah, on dash
interesting.
brand, yep, on brand.
Interesting.
Swole, where you're like super
That's
buff.
just ridiculous.
I love swole. Swole is
I
good.
Yeah.
Sesh,
Like, as in a shortened session?
SESH. Yeah, but it means session, but it's not like a
So it's its own
shortened.
word now.
It's its own word, sesh.
Okay.
And inspo,
Also
also
the same
its own
word. Like,
word.
those are just shortened forms.
No, it's its own word now, Courtney. You have to accept it.
Nope, I don't.
All right, so let's actually dig into this subject a little bit more, and we'll invite someone who actually knows what they're talking about, actually writes in a second language. Coming up, we'll hear from poet Pantea Tofangchi. Stay tuned.
Gather. Gather, please. If you can gather in.
Gather round for the second half.
And we're gonna get started.
We're gonna get started.
We'll get started. We're officially getting started. Not teasing you this time. Welcome back to the Interloop Radio. We've been discussing the experience of writing in a second language, and now we'd like to welcome Pantea Tofangchi, poet and author of Glazed with War from Mason Jar Press, and this month's Author Corner Spotlight. Welcome, Pantea.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so good to be here.
We're
so
thrilled.
happy to have you on the show. So you write poetry exclusively in English, though your native tongue is Persian. So tell me, what drew you to poetry in general and to writing poetry in English specifically?
So I have to give you a little like a background in culture and for Iranian and Persian in particular. I think it's fair to say that we grow up in poetry. It's such a it's when I think about it and I think back, it's very interesting that like if you go to a grocery store or if you go get your car fixed, and if you just throw out a like a verse of a poem, the likelihood the person that working there reads the next to you is very high. And
Wow.
that's and I never thought about it in such a depth after I, until I immigrated. And and my love for language in particular and in poetry, it comes from that I grew up in that, whole, in a country that appreciates literature. But you also have to know that, especially poetry and creative writing, is is has always been a way of objection to political and to so um and what better medium than poetry, because you have to say like a lot less with so little words, and you have to say it a lot. So that's how poetry becomes so big in countries like Iran, where there always has been some sort of political, um, um, yes, conflict going on. But when so I carried that love with me, and I was a writer, a journalist. I never thought I will be writing poems, never. But
They sneak up on you that way.
I and I never thought, I even didn't think that I would be writing in English at all. Because I mean, how I couldn't trust myself to come, in a country that people breathe and live and learn English, and I couldn't dare. But this love for writing haunted me. Toward the beginning, I would write in Persian and send it back home, but it felt like I was cheating. It's like this is my country now. I have to be able to, So I thought, oh, I'm going to take some writing courses here and there, and anyway, we moved a lot, and I, ended up in Baltimore, and that's how I started. And I have so much of that. I think I owe it to my teachers and professor at the University of Baltimore. They, I mean, of some of my writing, when they criticizing and write, comments on it, one of my teachers in particular told me, "You have to take poetry courses. You're gonna love it." And I specifically choose a program to go in where it was half graphic design and half writing. And not that I loved doing graphic design. I had no idea whatsoever, but I couldn't trust myself to go pure writing program. So I thought that's a good balance. At least I don't have to write as much. So, and then I fell in love with graphic design. And the more I think about it, the more connected they are, poetry and graphic design, because again, you have to say a lot with a lot of white space.
Yeah.
So they, it was so strange. I mean, the road that I, had to travel on to get there. So long story short, I was doing I took a poetry class. I took Kendra Kopelka's poetry class, and for one of her assignments, we had to write about our childhood, write something about a memory from childhood. And I wrote this poem about war, which I never thought I would write. That was a subject
Mm.
that I never wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I think a spark opened up back. I still was not, I was not ready. But then, I gradually, that's the path I ended up taking. Um, but what I loved was that um, the, my my disability to write something that I wanted to say
Mm.
made me more interested in poetry. I know I don't make
Mm.
sense, but I had to find a creative way of saying it.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And that, opened up this bizarre situation for me where I would start somewhere and I would ended up somewhere else completely different. Yet
Mm.
I was able to say what I meant to say. It
Mm-hmm.
was like at first it was like killing your best character in fiction,
Mhm.
and but then you know um, do I make sense at all?
Yes.
Absolutely, yeah.
You're making me wonder, as kind of an exercise in exercising trauma through writing, did you find the extra added step of translation to be kind of the distance that you needed to talk about those things or to write about those things? Because you're almost somewhat removed from the native space and the native tongue, right?
Such
Does that make sense?
interesting. Oh yes,
Okay.
I think you hit a spot that I did not think about. I
Mm.
maybe
Mm-hmm.
maybe because it took me to my thinking mode.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was always like digging and thinking,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm.
even doubting, like what is going on and why should I do it? Should I do it? Should I not do it? Um, until I attended a writing conference and I heard someone um, reading about a book that he wrote decades like after Vietnam War,
Mm.
and it I realized that his voice, as writing about it 50 years or some later, gave him a new perspective and
Mm-hmm.
a space that he needed to take to be able to go back and write that. And
Mm-hmm.
it was then that I decided I have to write. Um,
Mm.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think that struggling with how or if we should write our stories is very relatable. Um, but I read something when I was reading about you, Panta, that I found so fascinating, and I never would have articulated it this way. In an interview with Little Patuxent Review, you said, I think about every letter that I put on a piece of paper like a drop of paint on a white canvas. And earlier, you mentioned that you're both a writer and a graphic designer, and that you think about the page in similar ways. So, and when I was reading your poetry, that felt very, very true to me. It rung true because your poetry is so minimal and yet very visually evocative. So I'm just curious about that process and the experience of it being visual for you.
well, thank you for that. um, I I fell in love with typography
Mm.
in such a deep way,
Mm.
and I think the reason for that was that I was not a native language of English. And typography and letters did not have the same meaning and that they have for you, for instance, as
Mhm.
because you grow up with it. You take a letter G for granted. But I mean, there is this beautiful curve of dancing, on
Mhm.
the bottom and the way that it comes up. And when you make it to italic, oh my God, such a life-changing moment. And that circle in the middle and that space, it's like hugging. You could
Mm.
say that we have that in Persian a lot because calligraphy, it's such a
Yeah.
deep, but I grew up with it. I didn't see it the same way that I was looking at it in Persian. And that, and that gave me a whole new, layer of looking, seeing
Mhm.
differently. That's all it is, just seeing differently. I mean, I, I, I remember the first time that the letter R was blown up on a, on a monitor in front of us, and for the entire class. I was like, oh, I can't explain it, but it literally changed the way that I edited everything after,
Hmm.
you know?
Ours
Um,
are pretty beautiful
I
as
know,
letters
right?
Really?
go.
As
They
someone
really
whose name
are.
starts with an R,
Oh,
I
I think
hate
it's
writing
gorgeous.
R.
No, because you can have like the long swoop of the leg underneath. You can like, it can be so
Yes.
different.
Oh my gosh. It's
Panta, you're making me think we're working on some new branding stuff for the inner loop, and
huh?
Rachel and I like pour over typography. we're like, well, that one is slightly more curved, but what is that saying? What does that mean? So you are speaking
Oh
to my
gosh.
heart. Yeah.
Yes. Well, if I join in, that conversation will be forever.
That's awesome.
Yes.
Yeah, so Panta, you were talking a little bit about how you came to this subject of your collection, Glazed with War, that you never thought
Mhm.
you would write about that, but it sort of came to you in this poetry workshop. So tell us a little bit more about like the development of that concept and how it became a collection.
So when I left that conference that I told you earlier, um, I was driving back home and I told myself, this is it. That was my
Mm,
clue. Because um, I don't know, I am such a huge believer in serendipity. And
mm,
I cherish it. And I had a chunk of time because I was working in the conference. Um, but then I have a chunk of time and I looked through the program and I didn't have time to study and know where I want to go. And I just went into that and I sat there and there he read and I came out a different person.
mm,
So I was driving home and I said, okay, I don't know what the life of this collection that I am going to write will be, but I know that I have to write it for my own sake.
mm,
Um, so and then um, be back then being I mean I think I just graduated from my MFA program or I was in the last year. I can't remember, but I learned about myself that I work really well when I have deadline, like very um,
Yes, you're
if
in
you
good
leave me
company.
like free spirited, no, nothing creative will. So anyway, I told myself I'm gonna create myself a ritual, and I will write, and that's what I did. I I wrote for 2 months every
mm,
day, every single day, for an hour in the morning. I would read for an hour and then I would write for an hour. I studied, not studied, I researched what I want to read. And after 1 week of, um, like pouring all my favorite collections on the floor and sit in the middle of it and decide who I'm going to read. And I decided that I'm going to read William Stafford every single day. And that's what I did. I would wake up every day, read for 1 hour, and write for 1 hour.
Mm.
And it was such a life-changing experience for me. Um, I Memories started pouring out
Mhm.
that I
Mm.
didn't no longer remember them.
Mhm.
Lots of emotions, um, a lot of sad feelings. Um, and I remember one day I told myself, wait a minute, I didn't have a childhood. Oh my God, I didn't have a childhood.
Hmm.
But you don't know that. Back then, I had a perfect childhood because I didn't know anything else.
Yeah.
Mm.
Everyone around me was going through war.
Mhm.
The war started when I was 8, and I
Mhm.
was in senior high when it ended. And that's
Yeah.
how,
Mm.
um,
Wow.
so there, and then there was a long pause because, um, and then it took me months to go back and start revising. Um,
Mm.
and then
Yeah.
another long pause because I told myself, okay, I wrote it, now I'm done.
Yeah.
Right.
It's
That's
out.
how I felt about my book. I'm
Yes.
like, now I'm putting it
I'm
away. I'm
good.
never looking at
I'm
it
gonna
again.
put it away. But then
Yeah.
I had years later, I had to think about now I have to put it out there, not
Yes.
just
Mm.
out there. It has to be out there.
Yes.
That took
Yeah.
longer than writing it.
I bet. I bet.
Yeah.
Well, I would love to hear a few poems from the
Yeah.
collection.
Sure, sure. I think I initially picked a few other poems, but I'm going to read this one because what you said about languages in the beginning of the podcast,
Hmm.
um, and I'll tell you why later. This one called The Round Window. Sunrise in September used to be cold. The smell of narengi nobar, the sound of teaspoon dancing in the large teacup while my papa sweetened his tea. Our dark kitchen, my mama, my dad, my baby sister, and Nader. Memory has a face. Memory is thin and sharp. I see me standing on the street corner looking up at our apartment. What if I go to school and our home is gone while I'm gone too? There stands my mama, her face smiling at me through the round window among the green leaves. The school is a few blocks away. Doesn't matter where the bomb drops. On our home, on our school, we will be still together, she tells me. I throw her kisses. She always stays until I disappear.
Mm. I love the idea that memory has a face, and then in so many ways that face keeps coming up in the different lines in the poem. Like in
Mhm.
the round window almost feels like a face, and over and there's a face.
Mm.
I love that.
If you notice in the second line of the poem, there's a Persian word which
Mm.
is written in Persian and it's read in Persian. And so what did you think about that? You too.
I loved it. I thought it like created a sense of place.
Mhm.
Um and also I feel like it relates to memory, and that memory is like pieces of things, little
Hmm.
pieces of things, and it's not like congruent.
Yes,
I
and my
Sorry, yeah, no, when reading poems, I like to be confronted, especially if I know where the writer is from. I
mhm,
like them to like infuse that.
mm,
Uh, and it almost had kind of the same effect for me as you referred to tea. And
Mhm.
we have another poet friend, Peyman, who is Iranian as well. And he writes almost always there's a reference to tea in his poems. And that situates you in the place as well.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yes, tea is like coffee in Persian
Yeah.
culture. Yes. um, what I noticed after reading poems like this is that sometimes words like this, it does not matter what it means. It's like music.
Totally.
Mhm.
Hmm.
You listen to it, you have no idea what she's singing about, and you don't even understand the language, but you feel it.
It makes
Um,
sense.
Mhm.
Yeah.
right. That's how I, that's one of the reasons I love poetry.
Yeah,
Um,
so true. You can just let it wash over you.
right.
Mhm. Beautiful.
Do you have
Shall we hear
another
another one?
poem? Like,
Can I say it again?
I said, shall we hear another?
Oh, you want another poem? Oh,
yeah,
right.
it's just like, oh.
More, please.
um, so this one is called The Same New Day. War didn't stop us from wanting a new doll. War didn't stop us from having birthday parties. War didn't stop me from wanting another baby sister or brother. It stopped my mom from wanting another baby, though. War didn't stop my family's passion for new plants and flowers, didn't stop my parents from providing. And the war didn't stop either. We were all there, us, life, death, and war, like a family with a lot of issues.
Mm. Yeah, I love that repetition in that poem. And the comparison of war with family rings very true with my
Yeah.
family.
Well, and it also, you were just saying how, you came to this, I really felt that realization of not having a childhood and yet being a child, like
Mm.
that's so, even just I think it was the opening line, right? Didn't stop you from wanting a new doll. That's such a very just like
Mhm.
child thing to hold, that,
Mm.
that in some ways it reaches everything and it can't reach everything at the same time.
Mhm.
Mm. Beautiful. Well, this has been such
Yeah.
a great discussion, Panta. Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much. Thanks for having me. Thank you.
Our absolute pleasure. You can find out more about Panta, read more interviews and articles, and buy her book, Glazed with War, on our website, theinterlooplit.org/authors corner, as well as on masonjarpress.com. But we're not going to let Panta go just yet, and we are going to get a little goofy.
Up next, we'll discover the reason Rachel is such a bad speller, and I can attest to that. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Interloop Radio.
We turn now to some interesting factoids about the English language and a little bit of a guessing game. Panta, Courtney, are you guys ready?
So ready.
Not
Panta's
ready.
not ready.
I was going to say, are you sure? Okay. So I in the first block of the show, I referenced a few things that we were going to cover. One was something Courtney mentioned about the Germanic and the French cognates in English. So, and I also mentioned that most languages, don't have quite so many hybrids of different kinds of etymologies. Also, in most languages, the sense that longer words are fancier and more specific is not really there in a lot of languages. that feeling exists in English because French and especially Latin words are longer than Old English ones. And those connotations date back to class divisions in England in the 16th century. So I thought I would give you each an English word uh, from the Germanic or Old English cognate, and then you could try to give me the French or Latin cognate.
Oh, see, I didn't even know you were gonna do
Oh,
this. When
love
it came
that.
up, look at it, we're like on the
Which
same
part of
page.
this is
On
fun?
the same wavelength. It's just like, this does not sound like fun to
You're
me.
not wrong. You're not wrong.
All right, I'll start with a really easy one. Here's the Old English word, or the cognate from Old English, kingly.
Royal.
Royal's French. Any guess on the Latin?
Mm.
Mhm.
You
I'm
just
trying
have
to
to be
remember.
human thesauruses, that's all.
It's Ray, right? Isn't it something with an R?
Yeah,
Right?
regal.
Rico. Yeah,
So
yeah,
kingly,
yeah.
royal, regal.
Yes.
And when you hear those words, you're like, oh, I'm getting fancier and fancier.
Regalia. Yes.
All
Listen,
right, how
all the words
about
look fancy to me.
Yeah. That's right, especially the R's.
right? Royal and regal. See, I did that for you, Ponta. I knew.
Mhm.
Thank you.
How about ask? French, Latin. What's a fancy word for ask?
Inquire. And
Yes, that's the French.
All right. I don't know the Latin.
Courtney's going down on French. You study French, Courtney?
Mm.
I am a Francophile, so we'll just.
It's a good substitute for studying.
Yeah.
Just loving.
Yeah. You absorb some, in your life. Well, Spanish is preguntar. So I'm like, is it a.
It's a P word. It's a
Yeah.
P word. Petition.
Oh.
Ask,
Oh.
inquire, petition.
Petition.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. These are hard. So one more. Thoughtful. This one's easy for the French one.
Oh, I was going to say pensive, but is
Yeah,
that French?
pensive.
That's French?
That's French. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
Paul's like, I don't like this game. She's like,
Gotta go.
like,
Bye-bye.
Every guest gets a free skip on any tough questions.
That's right.
The Latin is contemplative.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
That's easy, right? Thoughtful,
Sure.
pensive, contemplative.
Uh-huh,
See how we get fancier with each
Yep. Yeah.
cognate? All right. Since we're on the subject of word length, I wonder if anyone can guess the most complex word in the English language. And I'll give you a hint. It's very short.
Complex as in like meaning or
Yes, most definitions. This word has a record-setting 645 definitions just as
Oh,
a verb.
brother.
as a verb, you said?
Mhm.
That's a
I'll
hint.
keep giving you hints.
Does it do?
To do, right? Yeah.
That's a great guess, but no, it is run. Run.
Ah.
So when the first edition of the Oxford English Dictionary came out, the most complex word was set,
Mhm.
as in set a
Okay.
clock or
Yeah.
set a
Yeah.
table.
Yeah.
And then the word put became the most complex. And then later the word run overtook them both by a long shot.
Interesting.
And linguists
Oh.
and specialists believe that it's because of advancements in technology, because I'm sure you thought like run a program or my
Right.
phone runs apps. But also, this part was interesting that it maybe has to do with the cultural times, because we as a culture are much more energetic and frantic. And so we don't use the words set and put as much
Huh.
as we use run. Like, I want to run an idea by you.
Or you're giving me the runaround.
Nice.
All right.
That's clever.
Okay. All right. The reason I'm such a bad speller, okay,
Yeah.
is that most spoken languages have around 5 vowel sounds, but English has 11 vowel sounds.
Yeah. A, I, O, U, A,
damn, Court.
Right?
She's like, I teach
No.
English.
That like we sang songs in first grade to learn the vowel sounds, and
Oh,
anything
really?
musical just like stays in my head
That's so
indefinitely,
true.
like for good or bad. So
Yeah, James still hums
mhm.
songs from elementary
Yep.
school.
Yeah.
But so the thing is that we still have to make those 11 sounds with the same 5 letters because we only have 5 letters for vowels. And so that's why English is so hard to spell because
Mhm.
they have to make twice the amount of sounds with the same amount of letters as everybody else. So here's a
Mhm.
good example. OUGH can be pronounced in 9 different ways.
Great.
OUGH. Does anybody want
Ow,
to throw some out?
ow, oh, off. That's 3. I don't know the rest.
Off. I like how you put the F in there.
Yeah, like sloth.
yeah. Give me some words. Yeah. Sloth, like cough. That's one.
Yeah, cough. There you go.
Sloth, cough, trough.
Rough.
Rough.
Yeah. Oh,
Say
yeah. That's a
rough,
good one.
enough, tough. What else?
Bough, like the bough of a tree.
Yes. Bow,
Right.
plow, drought.
Drought. Yeah.
What else?
Bra.
Something with a long O, like a
Though, dough,
oh yeah.
although.
Although. Yes. Yes. Rachel's like, let me help you.
yeah. No, you got it. You don't have to say the words. You could just say the sounds. What else we got? A couple more?
I don't know.
Mm. What about through?
Oh, I hadn't even thought of that. See, I'm like trying to visualize
Through.
words.
Yeah.
How about some other TH, OU, GH
thou. We already did
combinations?
the owl.
We did bow. We did through. We did trough.
Ought. Did we do the
Ought. We did not do ought yet. Thought, bought, brought, fought, brought.
all right? How many are we up to here?
You guys are doing great. Okay, we've already got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of 9.
All right.
So the other ones are pretty hard. It's like hiccup. Yeah, spelled
Hiccup?
HICCOUGH. That's how a way you can spell hiccup. And you guys
No.
are all wondering why I can't spell.
No, that is
Yes.
not a way to spell hiccup.
Yes, Panta, that face is appropriate.
I disagree.
Oh.
Hiccup, as in cup. And then lock, LOUGH, lock. See, this is why English is ridiculous. That's a Scottish word for lake, by the way.
Yeah,
Lock.
but isn't it usually
LOUGH.
LOC? So, like in Scottish, it's LOCH.
No, LOUGH. Lock.
Mm-hmm,
Lock.
mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the last one, yeah. I know. I'm angry about it too, guys. The last one is thorough or burrow.
Right. Yeah.
Burrow.
Thorough.
Yeah. That's
Borrow.
rough. Okay. English is rough.
It is.
That's my conclusion.
But speaking of bad speller, sometimes autocorrect cannot correct me.
Yes.
Oh my God. I can't even tell you. I have that problem so much. It'll autocorrect me to completely different words. I'm like,
Yes.
no, why don't you know what I'm saying?
Mhm. That's not what
Yeah,
I
that's
meant.
why
Yes.
auto dictate. That's my friend. Dictate on the phone. I'll just like be like, I can't even get close. I'm gonna hit the speaker and say it.
Listen,
like
as
hors
a
d'oeuvres. I can't
non-speaker,
say
that
it. I
doesn't work for me either.
Oh no!
It's okay.
I need 5 people.
This is how we keep the AI from taking over. We just have to keep. Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
I think that you were saying this is how we just transition ourselves
No.
into integrating with AI because we can't
This
do
is
it
how
by
we
ourselves.
keep it at bay.
Oh my gosh. All right. Well, thank you so much for playing with us and being on the show, Panta.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it was awesome. Really good to get to know you.
And that's our show. We'll be back next Monday with our Just Checking In series, where we give our writer friends a call to hear how their writing lives are going. Plus, we're coming up on our 100th episode of the Inner Loop Radio, and we want to hear from you. Got a favorite Inner Loop moment? or having a burning question you're dying to ask us?
Reach out to hello@theinnerlooplit.org. You can submit your question or memory as an audio file or just send it the old-fashioned way and we'll read it aloud.
And then tune in on December 4th for our 100th episode to hear our response.
And if you want to learn more about The Inner Loop and all of our programming, visit us on the web at theinnerlooplit.org, where you can also donate to support us and local literature. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter Twex, X, what is it called now?
No, don't call it that.
Twitter,
I
yeah.
refuse.
Me too. All right. At The Inner Loop Lit.
Today's episode was produced by me, Rachel Kuntz. Our theme music is by Andrew Logan, and our technical advisor is James Skinner. Thanks again to Pantea Tofangchi for joining us on the show. If you enjoyed today's episode, translate your joy into another language.
Or better yet, leave us a review in multiple languages.
Such as, Ich liebe the Inner Loop Radio. Courtney und Rachel sind die besten Podcast-Moderaten. Sie sind lustig, conscious und informativ. Was will man mehr?
That was really good. Where are you hiding this?
Yeah, I studied German a long time ago.
All right. Well, don't forget to subscribe for more of that. Subscribe so you can get inspired, get focused, and get lit.
On the Inner Loop Radio.